The crash retrievals are the holy grail to all of this because it has the debris, the bodies, and the craft itself. And that's what we're looking for. Anything short of physical evidence is not going to move this whole field forward. We as researchers, we're on the outside trying to get in. They're on the inside trying to keep us from getting in. And so that's the problem. This is the fight we're up against. This is the info war that we're up against. And what they're trying to do is they're waiting out the clock so that all the witnesses die. And in their sense, it's cover-up complete because they hold all the bodies, the craft, the motion picture film reel, and all the 8x10 black and white glossies. They've got the goods. And there are thousands of people around the world for the last 80 years trying to breach this subject, trying to end the cosmic Watergate. And to this day, no one has actually done it and come back with physical evidence proving it. And that's where we're at in this whole research crusade at this point.
Greetings and welcome to the Vortex. I'm your host, Daniel Allen Jones, and I'm very honored to be back here with Michael Schratt.
Good to be with you.
Michael, it's great to have you. You've done an amazing job of looking into the stealth projects when it comes to aviation and the secret things that are going on sort of behind closed doors. Beyond just the conventional aircraft that we know of, there's a lot that's been made that maybe the public doesn't know about. And this could actually lead us to wonder where some of these come from and how maybe the inspiration came about for these, if this is something that was sort of organically come upon, or if there's something that maybe helped to encourage these ideas through something that could have potentially been found or retrieved. And so when it comes to the subject and study of UFOs and reports of things that have not only been seen, but purported to have crashed, and all of these things, we had this idea of crashed retrievals. We're here at Contact in the Desert, where there are many different speakers talking about different things, and you gave a presentation about crash retrievals. And I think it's really fascinating to wonder what's been going on with not just why are some of these strange and interesting objects crashing, but what's going on after they disappear, who's getting them, where they're going. So let's get into some of these things. You have a really interesting collection, and I'm very curious to see kind of how things have been going with the work you've been doing recently, and we can get into that.
Okay, good. So I think it's important to get a little bit of background on who we're talking about here. So there's a man who passed away in 1994. His name is Leonard Stringfield. He was in World War II. He had a Foo Fighter sighting where his plane was just about ready to go down. Both engines came back on and then they landed, but it affected him for the rest of his life. And over the years, he started collecting UFO reports. And he wrote 2 books. And then later in life, somewhere around 1973 timeframe, he started collecting stories of these alleged UFO crash retrievals. But the difference is they came from military witnesses. So they weren't just total civilians. I mean, these people had military backgrounds. They were military pilots, engineers, test pilots. There were some astronaut cases. Generals who worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, people who were on the retrieval teams who handled the debris, bodies in the craft, people who loaded these craft onto 18-wheeler, tractor-trailer lowboys and shipped them to Wright-Patterson Air Force. That's the caliber of witnesses that Leonard had got in his collection. Now, if we go forward, through the years, he put together these status reports. And when he died in '94, his wife, Dell, published all these things, so they are available. However, the problem is, and this is the complete compendium of all of the crash retrieval reports.
Oh, wow.
This is the book you should have.
Yeah.
So this is UFO crash retrievals, the complete investigations, all his status reports, 1978 to 1994. And it is case after case of military UFO crash retrievals, all of the intricate details from first-hand witnesses. But as you go through this, you'll notice, number one, there's no pictures, there's no drawings. So you're left with your own imagination, which isn't bad, but there's no visual aids to describe what these things look like.
Right.
And I'm thinking, someone has got to go through this, every single case, and get these things illustrated with a drawing and a full color illustration to make these cases come alive. So over the past 2 years, that's exactly what I've been doing. I've been working with 3 artists all around the country, and it's been my crusade to continue with Leonard's legacy to make these cases come alive. Now, the other thing is, The agreement that he made with his witnesses is that he would preserve an important part of our national history by telling the story, but their names had to remain under wraps. That was the agreement. So there's really no way to independently verify a lot of these cases because these people are dead now, and the family will never release his private notes with the names. They won't do it. So we're left with just the accounts. But I did get a document that had about 20 names on it. So I have theirs. I was able to pull out another 20 from the dictation notes. So I have a little over 40, close to 50 names, which technically could be followed up on. They could be brought into a court of law, but it won't be easy to track them down because these people are 50 years old. But the background on how this began, though, is in 1978, Leonard gave a lecture at the MUFON Symposium in Dayton, Ohio, right by Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Yeah.
And so he laid out this paper, Retrievals of the Third Kind, and he had about 12 cases from his witnesses that came to him and he interviewed. And it was a sensation immediately at the conference. There were people that were yelling at him. I mean, it was polarizing because he could not release the name, so people were frustrated. They had no way to verify what Leonard was saying. So it was really a mixed bag. And I've heard that like other speakers had to come in on his behalf and like save him from the crowd because it was like these people were coming down on him because this was a new concept back in '78. People really had not heard the term UFO crash retrievals. Even Roswell was just barely breaking through that time. So
right.
All this stuff was new at the time. So I thought what we would do is we will go through some of these cases here. Now all of these come from this book. They all have a spec sheet to go with it. They all have historical background to go with it. So bottom line is I didn't make any of these up. They're all in this book. And that's how we got the information. Now the first one, the primary eyewitness got in touch with Leonard. And what she said is that this thing came down, this is 1942, this is long before Roswell. That's one thing to keep in mind is that there were crash retrievals quite a bit before Roswell. And this thing was about 15 feet in diameter. It was 10 feet tall. When it came down on an army base north of Georgia, that she wouldn't tell Leonard where it was, so he never even found out. Now, it hit kind of an awning or the top of the roof of the facility. It ripped open a hole breach on the side of the craft, so there was some damage. Now, she also said that there were 3 levels to this craft. The upper level had a control panel with buttons, switches, dials, and levers. Below that deck, there was another deck that had 4 what looked like bar stools, and they were posted just aft of this wraparound window that you see right here. Now the bottom, which would be totally on this area here, there was an entryway hatch. So those were the 3 type of different floors on this. Now she also mentioned, which we've added here, there were hieroglyphic lettering and iconology written along the outer circumference of the craft itself. There were 4 bodies recovered. They were taken alive but were later dead. They were about 5 feet tall, and they had oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose, emaciated body parts, hands that went down below the knees. And this is something that keeps on popping up again and again and again. We keep hearing about this.
Right.
So if this lady is true, if it's legit, they have the bodies, they have the craft, they have the debris. They've got all this, and they're keeping it under wraps as a matter of national security. And it's case after case after case. And after looking at all of these cases within this book and the private dictation notes of Leonard Stringfield from the collection at Lunken Airport, I counted a grand total of 119 cases.
Wow.
So the odds are in our favor. The odds are actually in our favor. It's 119 to 1 in our favor. All we need is one of these cases to be real, and then the whole concept of UFO crash retrieval non-reality falls apart completely. So that's what I said, like if you wanted to go to Vegas and you went to a roulette wheel and the roulette wheel had 120 spaces on it and you bet 119 chips on all the different things except one, you're going to win every time. You're going to win literally every time. You can't lose. I mean, you could, but it would be... The odds of you losing are so minimal that the odds are in our favor. So I think it's a good idea. All right, next one. Continuing down the line here. This was a private who worked in records management. This is 1946. This is at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He had a friend who was a military guard there at the base. Now, this is before it became Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. It was known as Wright Field at the time. Didn't become Wright-Patterson until 1947. So this guy said, hey, I got something I want to show you. So he brought him inside the hangar, kind of like off to the back wall there, and just sitting on the concrete floor was about an 18-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. It had a flat section that was 18 inches wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft itself. He said that there was a tarp folded up near the bottom of it. There were white lab coat technicians that were working on it. And then he said that what these technicians were doing is they were taking a diamond tip drill bit and trying to drill through the window of this thing. And they couldn't do it. And this came from a railroad flat car in Arkansas, and they shipped it all the way back to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So what we did is we took all the information from the eyewitness. We've got the original sketch here. We've got the spec sheet, and I think I've got the drawings here too. Yep, these are the drawings. So we'll go through these real quickly here. This is the second pass color illustration that gives you an idea what it looked like. And if you see here, this red dot is the attempted point of entry. So this thing is 7 feet tall, about 15 feet in diameter. It had a central column that rose up from the bottom of the center part all the way up to this section here. Now, I want to mention, this primary witness said that there were no rivets, there were no welds, no seams, no hatches, no interior control panels, no seats. So it was devoid of almost anything. And then this is our full color rendering of what it looked like if you were there, and you could see it, you know. And that's the goal, is to make these things come alive on each one of these cases. So that's the bottom. Now this is before Roswell. This is 1946. So we're still quite a ways off from Roswell. Okay, next one. This is 1947, and this is at Berkeley University. And this white lab coat technician is at the right place at the right time when this 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboy, it backs into the warehouse over at Berkeley University. And this guy is standing as this tractor trailer is coming in, and he notices this 30-foot long egg-shaped craft on the back of the trailer. This is what it looked like. That's what the craft looks like. Now, he said it looked like a cracked egg with the yolk, and it had a flat section wrapped around the outer portion of it. This was a 3-foot diameter sphere inside the craft itself. Now, there were two bulkheads. There was one up front that was a composite bulkhead. There was one over on the other side, and it wrapped around the outer circumference of the interior yolk or orb. He also mentioned that there was shrapnel off to the bottom side of the craft, indicating there was a hull breach or like an interior implosion that pushed out this shrapnel. And my thought is, okay, this could be one of two things. Either it is the main craft itself, or this is the propulsion system for a much larger craft, because this thing's already 30 feet in diameter. So if this fits in something else, then now you're talking about something huge. So we took all the information together from the primary eyewitness, and we came up with this.
Wow.
That's the full color rendering of this one here. Hopefully that shows up. So here we've got him backing in. We've got the technician. You can now see the yolk very well. We've got the hull breach, the cracked egg. We've got the shrapnel here. And this is 1947 Berkeley. So we're still not even at Roswell. We're in the same year now, but we haven't even made it yet. So already we're 3 in, and it's before Roswell. And if you count Cape Girardeau, that's April 1941. Now we're 4 in. And if you count the 2 that recovered from Battle of Los Angeles, that was in 42. Now we've got 4, 5, 6 now.
Yeah.
So not only does the body count go up, but the craft count goes up, and we're still not at Roswell yet. So that's important to keep in mind that as well.
It's incredible.
Yeah. All right, next one. Let's see here. Okay, this is Sierra Madre Mountain Range, Mexico. And it has to do with a boxcar, a flying boxcar. We believe it was 1948 timeframe. This is a C-119 flying boxcar. A craft came down, and there was an engineer who was a construction worker. He was working nearby this crash. And the Americans came over to him and said, would you assist us in getting this thing loaded up? And so this is what it looked like when they asked him for help. Now, you can see it being loaded into the back aft clamshell cargo bay doors of the C-119. So we started calculating, okay, how big could this craft be? And we gauged it by the interior wall of the C-119. Turns out that it can't be any more than 9 feet in diameter. You have to have 5 inches of clearance on either side. So it was a smaller craft. There were at least 2 bodies recovered, and they were burned bad, because he said that when he went to touch their faces, their skin came off on his hand.
Oh, wow.
So it was a gruesome scene, but that's how that all went down. So let's see here. We took yeah, here we go. Okay, so that is what the scene looked like. Gives you an idea. Yep, so we've got the bodies here. They were charred. Craft is being loaded. And this is another retrieval operation. And it's all in this book here. It's described in this book here. And so each one of these comes with a spec sheet so that there's something to hang it up on. All right, next one. 1952, at the Pentagon, this lady, somehow she accidentally went through a double door that was like off limits. And so now she's in this dark, dingy, misty room. There's some boxes off to the right. She's kind of lost, so she kind of does this 180 turn. And when she makes the turn, she is greeted by a pickled alien in a glass jar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Within 5 seconds, MP grabbed her shoulder, told her to get out of there immediately. She had to sign papers, never to talk about it, but a friend of Leonard got to her, and she did eventually get back to Leonard, and she didn't want to talk about it anymore. She said, I know what you're talking about, I know what you want, but I can't talk about it. And so this is at the Pentagon, and we've heard from other people that there is an underground vault at the Pentagon where they probably keep 8x10 glossy black and white photographs, color photographs, gun camera footage. They probably have debris, and they may have bodies as well. So again, it's case after case of military witnesses are telling us that this is going on, that they have these craft. It's actually real. As crazy as it sounds, it appears to be real. And what's interesting about this whole field of UFOs and crash retrievals and all these accounts of the most outlandish sightings, the giggle factor, even in 2023, is still in place. The giggle factor really is. It's getting less, but it's still there. But within this field, there is an automatic self-protection system built into the system, so that whenever you talk about this with someone, they immediately discount it. So, they don't even have to have a cover-up, because it's so crazy, it's so outlandish. People are pre-wired not to believe it. So it has this automatic protection system built into it without them doing anything.
Yeah.
The military doesn't have to do anything, because all they have to do is throw out some ridiculous story on supermarket checkout line, and it discredits everything, including the good cases. So we're left with trying to separate the bad cases from the good cases. Okay, next one, which I really like. This is 1953. It's Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. It's at night. A 4-engine DC-7 taxis up on the tarmac. It goes into an open hangar. As soon as it taxis in, the hangar doors close, and then there's a forklift that taxis up onto the port aft side of the DC-7, and the cargo bay door opens up, and they start offloading these wooden crates. And this forklift pulls up, brings up the forks. They put 5 crates on the forks. They lower the forks down to the concrete floor of the hangar. The 3 wooden crates on top have their lids pulled off. And this warrant officer is about 12 feet away, so he kind of peers over and looks inside. And when he looked inside, he saw 3 bodies in the crates. They were about 3 feet tall, oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose. They were wearing a one-piece tight-fitting flight suit. All of them were suspended off the bottom by a netting that protected it from the dry ice freezer burn below. One of them was female. And he said that he was also told that parts of the debris of the craft were also shipped in as well. So he was aware of that. So we took all the information from the primary eyewitness, and we came up with the full color rendering here. Gives you an idea what it looked like if you were actually there and could look inside these crates.
Wow, that is incredible.
And reading this guy, I tracked down his name. I have his name. So it could theoretically be possible to track him down. Now, I don't know. This is, going back a ways. I don't know if these people are still alive anymore. It's so hard to track these people down without teams of investigators going through and driving these things and trying to figure out if these people are even alive anymore. All right, 1955 at the Pentagon. This is a office worker who had a very interesting job. Her job was to catalog 1,000 components that came from a crash retrieval. 1,000 components, if
Wow.
you think about it. It's just incredible. So what they had set up, and this is at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in 1955, they had kind of an assembly line. A crash retrieval would come in, and there would be one guy on a table who had a photograph, and he would take a photograph of the debris. Then it would move to a next station where the debris was bagged and tagged, and then it would move on to her, and she would catalog it. And then they would put all this debris on all these shelving and everything. So I told my friend Rudy, I said, Rudy, give me an office worker, and then off to the side I need another table with a guy taking a photograph. And then she said that when she was typing up all these things, there was a mobile dolly on wheels that went right by her typewriter desk, and she looked over and there were 2 ET bodies being preserved in a like a preservation fluid. She saw it go right by. And so I said, I want to give me some shelving over on this side, shelving over on this side, and stack it with ET debris. What it looks like, I don't know. I haven't seen it. But so here's what we came up with.
Oh, wow.
It's all the debris. So here we have the photograph being taken. Here she is here. That's the dolly that rolled by. But if you could get to this facility at Wright-Patterson Air Force right this minute, you might see stacks of ET debris, like 1,000 pieces. So when we have congressmen and senators that have these ridiculous hearings and they say that we don't have any evidence, they could be telling the truth because they don't have a high enough security clearance. They don't have a need to know. So they would never be briefed on what's actually going on here.
Do you think that in the event that it became possible that if it were too maybe well known or something threatened the security of the site, that they would relocate? Some people speculate that something like Area 51, because of its notoriety, has had to be relocated. Do you think maybe something like this, or are they not worried about that at all? In your mind, do you think that's a possibility?
Yeah, they operate on a no single point failure process. They don't put all their eggs in one basket. So they spread these assets out. There's one at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, there's one at MacDill Air Force Base, there's one at Langley Air Force Base, there's one at Eglin Air Force Base. They absolutely spread out the assets. There's no way they're going to put everything in one place, because if they have a fire or anything happens, the crown jewels are lost forever. So it's only logical that they would have multiple places where they store this stuff. I mean, it makes the most sense. And the problem is, we as researchers, we're on the outside trying to get in. They're on the inside trying to keep us from getting in. And so that's the problem. This is the fight we're up against. This is the info war that we're up against. And what they're trying to do is they're waiting out the clock so that all the witnesses die. And in their sense, it's cover-up complete, because they hold all the bodies, the craft, the motion picture film reel, and all the 8x10 black and white glossies. They've got the goods. And there are thousands of people around the world for the last 80 years trying to breach this subject, trying to end the cosmic Watergate. And to this day, no one has actually done it and come back with physical evidence proving it. And that's where we're at in this whole research crusade at this point.
It's amazing, and I think it's really important that people can visualize these types of things. And you mentioned earlier the importance of someone like Leo Stringfield's work. It compiles all this research, but it's simply data that's shown in text format, and it's impressive, but there's not much for the mind to work with other than just to come up with your own envisioning. Now, you've gone out of your way to do what you can to actually visualize all these. Tell us a little bit about the importance of taking that from one phase of text, stories and ideas of accounts and reports, to really bringing them to life through this artwork and giving people a sense of what it would have actually looked like.
Sure. So what I can do here is, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this is directly from the book. So these are the spec sheets that go with each one of these cases. So this is abstract 12. It tells you all about what she did and everything else, but then at the very end here, and this is Mrs. G, they called her because they had to protect her identity. This is what she said. After telling Charles Wilhelm some of the barest facts she commented, quote, "Uncle Sam can't do anything to me once I'm in my grave." 6 months later, she passed away. So It's these people who I think are the pioneers. They are the heroes of America that have come forward. And that's what each one of these cases have. They all have a little spec sheet to go with it, a historical background, so that you can follow what the witness actually described. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's amazing to consider that if some of them are still around, that could potentially be willing to come forward in a way. Do you think that with all the things coming down here up until very recently, and as you said with the congressional hearings, and you have this new department and all of this, that a lot of people are curious about, but aren't really maybe too hopeful to see that they're going to be releasing anything substantial. Mm-hmm. It seems like there are some things going on with the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, otherwise known as AARO, with Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick coming forward to give these hearings and things that people are finding somewhat underwhelming, because there's not really a lot of compelling material that they're providing to convince people that there's something here. And I think that knowing that they're supposed to be dealing with these whistleblowers or these people who are coming forward to try to share about their involvement with something, do you find of any use for people that might still be around for any of these cases? The likeliness that if they are around and they came forward, do you think that would be something that would help to bring this to light, or that they would do something to continue to further bury that away, or are there other options? What do you think about that?
Well, in my professional assessment, looking at this, anything short of physical evidence, we're just spinning our wheels. I mean, it's going to be very important to have defense contractors come forward with their witness testimony. That is crucial to this, because they can be subpoenaed, they can come forward on their own, and then provide this testimony, and then those leads can be followed. But what they're going to eventually come back to is they're going to come back to the crash retrieval cases, because this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where the physical evidence comes in. And that's why when I give a presentation, I always say that the crash retrievals are the holy grail to all of this, because it has the debris, the bodies, and the craft itself. And that's what we're looking for. Anything short of physical evidence is not going to move this whole field forward. We need to get radical with this field, really radical. We can't have any more lights in the sky, trace cases, we broken branches. We're so far beyond that now, because what the witnesses are telling us is that they have the bodies and the craft. And so we need to find out exactly where they're keeping this, and we need to have an independent team of scientists go down to these facilities, and it needs to come out as a united coalition through the scientific community. That would be like the only way, and the way that Gordon Cooper had talked about it. So to me personally, I'm putting all my chips on the crash retrievals. Anything less than that, we're not going to get disclosure, and we're just going to be here another 75 years, and they're just going to kick the can down the road again and again, and they might feed us a little Air Force film here and there once every 4 or 5 years, and they're just going to wait out the clock. That's what they're going to do. That's what they're going to do.
Yeah, it seems like the footage and things that they've been showing over the last few years, it gets people who are otherwise not familiar with any of this stuff. It helps to provide something for them to know that there is interest, but it's not the best stuff to show for them to think that when they're looking at this, that there's really anything to it, because it's grainy, it's blurry, it's not really that impressive. And it seems like there probably could be a number of things that, if in the possession of those who have the ability to share it with the general public, that if it's not going to be hard physical evidence of something, debris, materials, biological specimens, something of that nature, whatever type of specimen these purported beings might actually be, then it will be very difficult, as you're saying, to really go forward, and it might provide some momentum and interest. But I think, as you said, scientifically speaking, all the people involved in any of these efforts who potentially have a hand managing any of these materials, exotic debris, materials, bodies, all of this, I would hope that there are some people who hopefully know what they're dealing with, who can understand how to develop new scientific disciplines that allow it to be put out to the people who deserve to have their hands on it and to understand it, and not to be just covered up and have the red tape over it forever. So it's really important, I think, that people and the general public, as you mentioned, it can come out in waves and maybe not all at once, but it's something that helps to show that there is something going on to provide awareness to the public. But it's not necessarily just through the government. You have people who are working on trying to make sense of this. And speaking of disclosure, many people are familiar with the Disclosure Project, who was put together by Dr. Stephen Greer. And this was over 20 years ago now. And so here we are, all this time later, and you're going to be involved with this upcoming event with Dr. Stephen Greer as well, providing some insight into some other and maybe lesser known crash retrieval cases. Are you able to give any idea or thoughts about what that's going to entail, or how that's going to help to kind of generate interest in a different and new way after all this time?
Sure. So we're going to be premiering the movie Lost Century. That's going to be one thing going on. I will be giving a few lectures, one on crash retrievals, one on historical UFO cases, one on the black budget. We're going to do a consolidation on the 12th, which is at the National Press Club. Dr. Greer will be briefing members of Congress. He will be talking to high-level military officials, and we're bringing in brand new military witnesses that have not been seen. These are completely brand new witnesses, and we've got the drawings to go with their cases, which have never been seen. So there will be some groundbreaking information, without a doubt.
That's awesome. Maybe if you could tell us about, speak to the effectiveness of holding events like this, like the one that we're at now and the one you'll be at here soon.
Right.
I think that people are really excited to see that they can get involved. It's participatory. They can really get to, as you say, meet witnesses and see them firsthand and hear their accounts and testimony. If you could speak to the effectiveness of what events like this do to help generate awareness and get this information out there.
I see the logic of where Dr. Greer is going, because the reason why he was successful in doing what he did back in 2001 is because he kept it military. It wasn't like a civilian that saw a light in the sky. He kept it military, and that's what bumped up the credibility level. That's why he was able to do what he did, and that's why it had such an impact that it did. I mean, this was the biggest thing that the National Press Club had ever seen before. But that was the only cases because he had a criteria of only vetting out these top-level military witnesses that had DD-214, all of the military records. They were verified, they were vetted, and that's what made the difference. There had never been a conference before like that in all of the UFO history of conferences and this was not a UFO conference. This was something different altogether. That's why it made a difference, because of the caliber of the witnesses.
I think it's incredible to see the effort put into making sure that, as you say, it's not just regarded as a typical UFO conference.
Correct.
And those can be fun and people have a good time and all of that too, but it pushes the envelope of what can really help to bring it into a place of more credibility. As you say, with the military, people generally put weight into their take on a situation as an account, and the reports that they seem to provide are a little bit more highly considered than, as you say, just people sort of in the civilian sector. So I'm very hopeful to see that with those upcoming events happening, that it does allow for people to realize that there's a lot to this. It's much more than just the fringes of science fiction and this idea that this is all just Hollywood or nonsense. But there's really the possibility that not only is there something to it, but we could have things behind closed doors in these facilities that have been stored away for decades, the greater part of a century, it seems like now. And it's something that we wonder often, when is this going to really come to a head and get out there, and people can really understand that not only is this that we have strange objects up there in the sky. The government has come forward and acknowledged UFOs for years, not just in this recent iteration, but that's been something that's happened over and over. But beyond that, to acclimate society and the general public to the reality that in the event that we really aren't alone, it's a kind of a big step. So there's a lot of implications with these things, and for some reasons, people would want to prevent that from being known, and others seem to really want to get this out. Do you think that there's an effort internally to get this out, or has it mostly been this doesn't need to be out at all, never see daylight again, or do you find that there's any way that people on the inside can help to kind of eventually get this out there and really provide us with that hard evidence?
You could make an argument for both cases, right? Because there's definitely a group that want this to come forward. There's a lot of defense contractors that have been keeping their stories under wrap for decades. They're dying to tell what they know, what they've seen. That's one group. The other group is this much more sinister, this much more devious group that once they classify something, they classify everything and they don't even bother reviewing it. They just put top secret stamp on everything. They classify everything. And this has been going on for decades now, and we've lost an important part of our national history just because these guys want to have power and control. I don't see them relinquishing their control anytime soon, because it would mean that they'd be going out of business. This is a multi-billion, trillion-dollar industry that they're doing here, because if they release the technology associated with the propulsion systems of these vehicles, probably some of these components up on these shelving units, they know how to work these things. Who knows what they've done? When you throw billions of dollars on classified programs every year, there's no telling what you can do. But if they have been able to successfully reverse engineer the propulsion systems of these things, just think of what it would do to the utilities. I mean, it would take a coal-fired plant, make it obsolete overnight. Internal combustion engine would be obsolete overnight. All of the nuclear power plants would be obsolete overnight. The solar panel farms, the wind farms, everything. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry that would literally be obsolete overnight. And the people in power and control, the oil cartels, that's one reason why they don't want to let it come out, because they know they'd be out of business.
Yeah, it sounds like it would really disrupt a lot of the monopoly of the power grid and all of it. And just as you say, just the general inner workings of society would probably be very disrupted and in some way have to be reconsidered in a lot of ways. So
definitely,
when it comes to these things that are happening currently and in the media, we see some pretty acclaimed scientists. You have Dr. Avi Loeb with the Galileo project. You have NASA working on trying to understand UAP, and of course the government's various efforts to try to provide the public with some kind of regard for UAP and things like this as well. Do you have any sense of hope for any of these efforts being made? Or is there anything that maybe we can look forward to, or is this something that you could say is more or less a distraction, or what are your thoughts on what's happening with sort of the public, the front man, so to speak, with what's going on with these things?
I'm skeptical of a government-sponsored program, because they're always going to err on the side of classify. They're not going to err on the side of let's get the information out, let's help the world and the people as a whole united coalition. It's when the individual defense contractors come out on their own, see that forces the government to answer to that. Because if a guy comes in forward and said, hey, I was on a crash retrieval team, here's what I saw, here's my commanding officer, and here's my other guys that went with me, and these 10 guys come together, now you've got something powerful. That's going to be a lot harder for them to brush that under and cover it up when you've got just reams of multiple military people coming forward with evidence, with multiple witnesses. It's going to be a lot harder than just a light in the sky.
Well, and kind of coming to a close here, when it comes to crash retrievals in general, do we find that there's a bit of a concentrated area within the last several decades, or even up until recently, that these seem to be noticed within, or are these an ongoing issue? Do we see that there are still crash retrievals that are potentially known about or happening or reported up until today, or is it mainly just something that has been in the last several decades?
I believe the crash retrievals have tapered off drastically. I believe they're still going on, but not to the level they were in the 40s and 50s. Going up into probably early 80s, but after that, I believe it's still going on, but not to the extent that it was, because most of these cases are very old. Nothing super current, but that doesn't mean it's not going on. And other countries have their own programs. But by and large, the U.S. is certainly the leader. And we'll stop at nothing to go snatch another crash retrieval from another country right under their noses. Those are the deepest black of the black programs, is when we just go in there with our own military and just grab these things so that we can profit, so that we can reverse engineer the technology to exploit the technology for our own military advantage. And we'll stop at nothing to do that. Yeah, we don't have a problem.
Well, I'm hopeful that in the event that these things are able to be utilized, hopefully, as you mentioned, for the betterment of humanity, that might seem a little altruistic, but as you say, it's realistically, obviously, as you mentioned, the military seems to want to be able to utilize and exploit any of these retrievals for their own gain and for defense secrecy and these types of things as well. And I'm hopeful that maybe in the eventual future we can have a point where real scientists who can bring this out, and engineers and those who can make a difference to improve society, and not just fueling an arms race that can provide more destruction in an already pretty chaotic world. And so you provide a lot of these cases in a way that's cohesive. You can visualize these things in a way that no one else has really considered before, which is a really impressive feat. So for those who are interested in following up with your work and are interested in finding out what you're up to and what you'll have going on here in the near future, what can they do to keep up with you?
They can follow my YouTube channel, and it's 3 words: Blue Room Media. So I'm constantly trying to upgrade that and put in new cases, and a lot of these cases are there, but the new cases are always coming in. So I want to keep the drawings coming, keep the illustrations coming. I will be updating the website, the YouTube channel, and that's how people can stay with it. Yeah.
Awesome. And just one quick note, because this is really interesting. Some people might not know, but Blue Room is a nod to a specific type of situation or a facility. If you could fill us in a little bit on what that entails. What's the Blue Room supposed to be?
Okay, so the backstory is former presidential candidate Barry Goldwater was good friends with, bomb them back to the Stone Age, Curtis LeMay. And Curtis LeMay was someone that was allegedly involved in the debris, the bodies, crash retrievals. He had a knowledge of this subject. And there appears to be a facility at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base called the Blue Room. And this is something that pops up again and again. Whenever you hear the word blue, it's always associated with ETs and UFO crash retrievals or something. Those two things are always tied together. So Barry Goldwater, being very curious about the UFO issue, he was well known to be very interested. And he, basically turned to his friend Curtis LeMay and said, General, I hear there's a room at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base where you guys keep all this stuff, all the bodies and the debris. Can I go in there? And he said, damn it, Barry, don't you ever ask me that question again, because if you do, I'll have you court-martialed. I can't even get in there. And that was the end of it. And he felt that he had never been yelled at by his good friend Curtis LeMay ever before, and he never brought it up again. So if there is no such thing as a Blue Room, why would Curtis LeMay go ballistic on Barry Goldwater? So it only makes sense that there is a place where they store it, because when you have a crash retrieval, where are they going to bring it? Where are they going to bring it that has a aeromedical lab, that has the foreign technology division, that has all the instruments to test the tensile strength of these things? There only one place has it, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. That's why all roads lead to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Yep, so it's an homage to the Blue Room.
Awesome. So Blue Room Media is the place to check out to keep up with everything you've got going on. Very cool.
Good.
So I like to think that we're making new discoveries every day. It's something that we have to make sure we're really doing the work, and you've done just that. We won't know if we don't go. You're there helping us to visualize these historic cases that are so compelling, and I hope to be able to see that some of these people are still alive and can be helpful in this process. So it's been amazing to see that there's still so much that can come out of this, and there's a lot of potential there. So Michael, it's been an honor to have you here.
Excellent.
We'll see you.
Good.
In the Vortex.
If you liked this video, be sure to check out our other content and get connected on our page and social media sites. Every day, new discoveries are being made all across the world and beyond, so let's work together to find out what's next. And remember, we won't know if we don't go. I'll see you in the Vortex.